The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 1606. The Chief Clerk will report the bill.
House File number 1606, an act relating to commerce, prohibiting access to notification technology, the second engrossment.
There are amendments at the desk, but without objection, we'll give the author of the bill a chance to define the bill. Representative Hanson, member from Dakota.
Thank you, Speaker. And thank you, members. I want to start with a few things before I really get into the details of this bill. This bill is needed for some really graphic and disturbing reasons. And discussing them can be particularly disturbing, especially for those who have experienced the tragedies of sexual violence, childhood sexual assault, sex trafficking, gender-based hate crimes, and other forms of sexual exploitation. I also want to name that the stories that were shared in our committee and in the press take an indescribable amount of courage, strength, and support to share on the public stage. And I want to thank the advocates and testifiers who are here with us today in the gallery and watching online for allowing me and this body to join them on this mission to advocate and create change so that fewer people have to go through and endure what they did. So now moving on to the bill. House File 1606 bans AI nudification features. This bill defines nudified content and requires that the nudifying features on apps, platforms, and websites be turned off in Minnesota. It also prohibits advertisements and promotion of apps with such features. And the bill establishes avenues for remedy and recourse for violations. While AI technology can be used for good in a lot of ways, it also can be used for evil. Governing bodies around the globe have failed to adequately regulate these evils in a timely manner. We need to ban nudification features because they allow users to create non-consensual, unauthorized deepfakes of sexually explicit content, including child sexual abuse material. Today, anybody can take a benign picture of you, me, or anyone else, upload it to one of these platforms that offer these features, and use the Nudify feature to create a non-consensual, sexually explicit image or video. These images generally end up posted to the dark web, shared on social media, exchanged for money, or worse. The victims of this heinous behavior are predominantly children and women. And while the victim pool continuously expands, so does the advancement of the technology. Over the course of just a few years, the AI notification features produce material that can often be indistinguishable from non-AI content. Both the quantity and the nature of the materials created using this technology are escalating, including the level of violence. And this trend doesn't happen in a vacuum. This trend trickles into the real world with real-world impacts, where we see similar escalations among perpetrators. From 2024 to 2025, AI-generated child sexual abuse material, also known as CSAM, increased online by at least 26,000%. This alarming rise, coupled with the increasingly graphic and violent AI-generated CSAM, should really keep us all up at night. The Internet Watch Foundation, or the IWF, is a globally recognized, reputable source of information and research into the terrifying trends of child sexual abuse online. In just a one-month period, IWF cataloged over 20,000 AI-generated images from just one of thousands of dark web child sexual abuse forums. Over half were cataloged as criminal. And they noted that nearly all CSAM today is so realistic that even trained experts struggle to differentiate it from non-AI content. Full-length AI-generated videos of violent rapes of children are emerging more and more every single day. And with every IWF report that I read, I see a new atrocious trend that emerges. Apps with these features are readily available in nearly every single app store. And young people will tell you that this is a pervasive problem in their world. I'd be willing to bet that very few people under 18 do not know someone who has become a victim of this technology. And most of the stories that I've heard from young people say that the content was created for malicious and sadistic reasons that were intended to cause harm to the victim who became the subject of the content. Many companies who are in control of AI generative technology have already restricted this feature from their platforms, which confirms that this is both possible and recognized in one of the rare glimpses of corporate morality. Many platforms who do not allow this feature in their AI models offer us proof that it is possible to be both successful and restrict access to these dangerous nudification features. Nudifying features have not contributed to the greater good. Instead, the misuse of this technology has empowered and enabled pedophiles and sexual predators around the globe. It has harmed children who are made victims by their cruel peers, women who were made victims by men they trusted for decades. And what's worse is that these predators are increasingly profiting while wreaking this havoc. So if we and other governing bodies choose to do nothing, the problem will only continue to get worse. We are already too late to this work, so we cannot afford to wait any longer and take action. And I ask you to support this bill. Thank you.
There is an amendment at the desk. The chief clerk will report the amendment.
Bakeberg moves to amend House Bill number 1606, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A4.
I recognize the maker of the amendment, the representative from Scott, Representative Bakeberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The A4 amendment builds on what Representative Hanson just talked about. Representative Hanson, I want to start out by thanking you for your work on House File 1606. And like I mentioned, the goal of this amendment is to strengthen on that. And what you said truly should keep us up at night. What is happening to our children, to our kids, should 100% keep us up at night. The simple goal of this amendment is twofold. Number one, it's to keep minors from accessing adult content online. The second goal is to make sure that we're balancing that protection of children with the privacy rights of adults that we all value. So in the physical world, we already have some common sense protections in place. An individual under 18 years old cannot walk into an adult store and buy adult content. But today, we don't have that same protection in the digital world, and that is where, as Representative Hanson talked about with nudification, much of the adult content or pornography is being consumed online. So this amendment simply brings the protections in the digital or in the physical world to the digital world. I want to be very clear, though, members, this bill, this amendment is about pornography. It is targeting pornography. We've taken extensive feedback through this process to make sure that the amendment and the underlying the bill only applies to commercial entities where 33.3% of the content is harmful to minors. So that threshold was intentionally put in place to address those pornography sites. It requires that those sites verify users are 18 years old before gaining access. It does not ban content, and it does not target individuals. It targets those sites. It places the responsibility on those sites that are producing the explicit content. And importantly, the definition of this bill is not vague. It has been upheld by the United States Constitution in Free Speech versus Paxton, where the language of this bill is modeled. And it's important that we did that because we wanted to ensure that it would uphold further constitutional challenges. At the same time, this bill has strong privacy protections for adults. That is important for adults that choose to access adult content. Personal information cannot be stored for over 24 hours. The information cannot be sold. It cannot be shared. and except when it's strictly laid out on how to verify the person's age. And then there's an accountability mechanism built into the bill that those sites must go through an independent audit as well yearly. I want to thank the Attorney General's office for their partnership in this bill to strengthen the language, to give them an enforcement mechanism that they can use. It allows for the Attorney General to enforce this in manners where they have reports that come to them, but also if they're made aware of things or they see things in news reports where they can choose to pursue action. It also allows for a private right of action, and there are clear limitations on the search engines that are not held liable for the content that they do not create. In short, this bill is about protecting kids. I think everyone in the chamber can agree that we should be protecting kids from harmful content, while also balancing the privacy protections of adults and holding bad actors accountable without overreach. Again, I thank you to the many stakeholders, including the Attorney General's office, for their work arriving to this language that's both effective and legally sound. There are 25 states that have passed age verification laws with similar language in the descriptions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I urge members for your support, and I request a roll call.
Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Representative Bakeberg. I'm going to ask members to vote no on this for a few reasons, and I'm going to lay them all out for you. Number one, I was not consulted about adding this amendment to this bill ever, at all. Nor were the survivor advocates whose voices I have taken a responsibility to amplify. The underlying bill was brought forward by survivors who have experienced great harm and who also had found the courage to lay bare their extremely intimate trauma for the sake of creating important change. And this should not be weighed down by a complex concept that doesn't sound ready for prime time. Number three, the underlying bill is addressing an AI feature used without the subject's consent to prey on and cause harm to the victim's life and well-being, all to make illegal, violent, dangerous, traumatizing sexual abuse material and sexually explicit content, again, without the subject's permission. To conflate this important issue and this important work with an amendment that is not also about non-consensual content creation, albeit technically germane, this in practice interrupts and deflects the focus from the issue that we're addressing in the underlying bill. And as a woman, I will do everything I can to keep the focus on the topic of this underlying bill. My fourth reason is because this has a cost. The rest of the bill does not. This bill and the critical problems it addresses does not deserve to be fiscally sunk over someone else's bill cost. And given these points, this amendment clearly would muddy the bill. I've heard a lot lately about the value of clean, single-issue bills lately. And that's precisely what the underlying bill is. If you are one of those people who's been talking about that and made that a session priority, I really look forward to you joining me in voting no on this amendment, because a no vote honors the work of advocates and survivors of sexual exploitation. It honors the victims. It specifically addresses the issue at hand, and it keeps this bill clean of any other issues. So please vote no on this amendment today. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Meeker, Representative Gilman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I will reference really quick this amendment and why I believe it's valid and we should add this to this bill here. Again, we talked about the amicus briefs here. There was a Texas law that was upheld in a legal challenge to the U.S. Supreme Court. This amendment is on a solid legal footing and cares for our women and children. In the case where they submitted data and information in support of this Texas law and the legislature's decision to protect children. One brief specifically talks about the harms to women and children, citing studies on how exposure to pornography can normalize sexual violence in women, and they are victimized. For women, the younger they are when they're first exposed to pornography, it can greatly increase the likelihood that they will be sexually victimized. Members, these are not partisan laws. These bills have been enacted with bipartisan support. Governors from both parties have signed these bills into law, and I'd like to share a couple of them with you. The Louisiana governor, Democrat. Texas governor is a Republican. North Carolina governor is a Democrat. Kentucky governor is a Democrat. Tennessee governor is a Republican. This amendment is here, again, to aid in protecting our women and children. And I believe that this would be a great thing to add to this bill so we can have Governor Walz sign that into law this session. Thank you so much.
I recognize the member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Hanson, now I can see you. I just want to say thanks for your bill. I think this is a very good bill. And I thank you also for recognizing that this amendment is, I think you called it technically germane. It's a really important issue that Representative Bakeberg is bringing. And when you mentioned the IWF, I quickly looked up the IWF's position on age verification, and they support age verification. And I think that that's really a very salient detail that makes putting the Bakeberg Amendment on even more precedent for our conversation. They say that age verification is an important aspect of what they're trying to get done. And I'd shared that with Representative Bakeberg, and I'm sure he was going to bring it up later. But, you know, I hearken back also to when Representative Bakeberg's bill was brought up as an urgency. Chair Liebling said that we shouldn't necessarily do it then because that your bill was on the horizon to come to us, and that we could probably talk about putting those two bills together. So I remember that day on the floor as well. This is such an important issue. And you know, when you started your conversation, you talked about the sexual exploitation. There is a lot of that on adult sites. I think that that's something that we want to do. And if I remember correctly, there is the statute for pornography in a physical form was set forth, I think, as 1961. That it requires age verification to do that. I think that this is, again, another really important idea that we want to put into statute. We can merge these two bills together. It is, as you said, very much the same tone, tenor, and it is technically germane, as you had said, using your words. This is an easy yes vote. This is an easy yes vote because we already have it for physical production of pornography. We are trying to vault the online into the modern world. And I think Representative Bakeberg's amendment is fantastic. So thanks, Representative Bakeberg, for your hard work on this. But again, you know, it's clear when the group that you said is leading the way on your very important issue says that age verification is also one of their priorities. Seems to me like this would be an easy thing for us to get done. So I would urge a yes vote on the Bakeberg amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize a member from Lyon, Representative Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. You know, I think we've got a cool opportunity here. You know, as we're, surfing this landscape of online pornography and online transactions and protecting children and wrapping those things up into a bill that can move forward and actually gain some support here in a bipartisan manner. You know, just the other day, I was shopping for some ammunition. And on that online website, there was an age verification just to view the content of what and what was not for sale on that website. Right? Sometimes that's industry-led, sometimes that's legislatively led, but I think this is an area that we can lead by the leadership of Representative Bakeberg to make an impact on children. I don't think there's a single person in this room that has not had a negative impact from pornography, whether how old you might be. For some of us, like me, it was a very young age. And others, it may have been older, and maybe you've been blessed enough and it's never been an issue. But friends, I can tell you what, that the longer that we can prolong that exposure, the longer that we can save kids from the travesty of what that is, friends, that is an impact that we can be proud of. This isn't a gotcha. This is a good governance amendment. It does not have to be controversial, and I can almost promise you that a green vote on the Bakebird Amendment, on the final bill as it's passed and sent to the governor's office. We're entering. Some of us are running for re-election, some of us aren't. But I can promise you this is something that we could all be proud of, we can all put on our lit, and be thankful that we voted for it. Vote green.
I recognize a member from Dakota, Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Speaker. You know, folks, I wish Representative Bakeberg the best of luck in getting his bill over the finish line this year. I worked really, really hard to get this bill where it is, and I just think it's really important for this body to know. I want to reiterate, I have not been talked to about this at all. I serve on the Commerce Committee, and there was a comment made previously that everybody in the Commerce Committee got an email. I did not. And I have stood ready to have those conversations too. So I do wish you the best of luck at that, but unfortunately, I've not been contacted by anybody, ever, at all, about putting this in here, and giving me less than about little over 24 hours notice to do so is really not the way that I think this goes. So I do not think this is a cool opportunity. I think having to regulate things about children being raped is awful. There were questions that came up about that bill, that there was questions for follow-up. I've not seen any evolution of that language, which is why I said I just don't think this is ready for prime time. I'm not opposing the idea, nobody has. But doing the work matters, like I said last time. We could be having a very different conversation right now, but we're not, for reasons that were based on choices. I can't control others' choices. But I ask you to vote no, to keep this bill clean, to keep it cost-free, be responsible, keep it cost-free, to stand with women, to stand with our advocates, to stand with kids who've talked about this issue to me and that are asking us to take action swiftly on this issue before us and to not conflate it with other Thanks. Vote no.
I recognize a member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the author of the bill yield to a question?
She will yield, Representative Quam.
I'm trying to understand the current law that prohibits minors from going into an establishment and purchasing adult materials. Are you against that current law?
Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Speaker. Absolutely not, Representative Quam. What I have said again and again is that I want to keep this bill clean. I want to make sure I address what the advocates brought forward. At no point in time did that come up, and I do not appreciate the insinuation. So please, with all due respect, I would love to talk about the bill, the underlying bill, and to keep us focused on that, folks. Thank you.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was not implying anything. I just wanted the clarity that I don't think any of us are against the current prohibition of minors purchasing adult material and going and getting adult material. And, frankly, we've got phones, we've got computer. There's so much on the internet that is the same as going into a store to purchase. So if we are saying we support the law that prevents an actual physical store from selling materials to minors, logic is that we'd also support the prohibition of electronic businesses allowing minors to have that material. So I see no logical reason to not vote green on this amendment.
Any further discussion? I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Scott, Representative Bakeberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. Representative Hanson, I will fully just say I should have reached out to you, so I apologize that I didn't do that. But I want to make it clear why I didn't reach out to you. Because when I dropped this bill last year, we waited until we were going to get a response from the Supreme Court to see if this was fit the constitutional muster. So that came in this summer. So then I sent an email to a number of DFL members that had expressed concerns in January, met with advocates, sent a follow-up email to all of the members of Commerce, and I want to correct what you said. Let me finish. All the members of Commerce who expressed interest in the bill, asked questions during committee. And I got a couple responses, and from the chair, what the chair of Commerce said was that if I would work with Representative Finke about some language about chatbot and kids, it would be great if you could work with Representative Finke together to address the bot issue and age verification. I will be honest. If Representative Finke is good with the language, then we can pass it out of committee. So the chair, the DFL chair of the Commerce Committee told me that I needed to work with Representative Finke, and I never got a response from any of my inquiries to sit down. So that's why I didn't reach out. Let's just go back to the intent of the bill. I had a conversation with a group of students, and a student said to me, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense why that bill wouldn't pass. Do you know how many of my friends are addicted to porn? Let's put aside our differences. Let's put aside all of the noise, and let's come together, because as kids are engaging in pornography online, and it is readily accessible over and over and over, these children are being desensitized. Those children are then acting out. We can do this together. I'm very frustrated with the process, very frustrated. But we can come together. This is a vetted, common sense amendment. I would beg, it's pretty rare that we have the Supreme Court of the United States that rules that our bill is within bounds, meets constitutional muster. So I would urge members to vote green. I would urge members to vote green. And if Representative Hanson would yield for a question.
She will yield. Representative Bakeberg.
Representative Hanson, I would be willing to remove the roll call if we would be able to work together to support kids, and if you would urge a green vote on this.
Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Representative Bakeberg. If you remove the roll call, I'm going to call for one. I think it's important to get folks on the record about muddying an issue that is really, really important to focus on the non-consensual. Again, without permission, women's lives are being ruined, sometimes by strangers, and oftentimes by men they trusted for decades. This is a serious issue. I'm asking that we keep the focus on this. As I said, I wish you the best of luck in getting your bill through. I've never had a single conversation. We live in the cities next to each other, and you have my phone number. I never heard from you. You know that I work on issues like this, so you know that I would be interested in this. I have to be honest, Representative Bakeberg. Like I said before, I just needed you to do the work. Giving me less than 24 hours notice, or a little over 24 hours notice, I just don't think is the way that we do this. And I don't think there's anybody in here who would want to put on a bill that they didn't even get a phone call or a text message about with less than 24 hours notice. So I think that's pretty pragmatic and realistic. And again, Man, we're so close, but yet so far away still, aren't we? Please vote no.
Representative Bakeberg.
So I would continue to request my roll call. I just want to address the cost piece. It's $1 million. So it would be, we can find $1 million to make sure that we are able to protect kids from online from pornography. So we talk a lot about cost, and I actually am glad that the DFL is concerned about cost, but $1 million is well worth it, because I see this all the time in my role as a professional. All the time, kids that are being hurt and victimized by this type of content. This content that oftentimes just pops up on their phone. I just want to make something clear. The average age of the first exposure to pornography is 12 years old. That's 6th, 7th grade. 73% of teens report consuming pornography before age 18. We could fix that today. 58% of teens accidentally see porn. 52% of teens in the study done by Common Sense Media in 2022, so the data is going to be even more concerning by now. 52% of teens report seeing choking, rape, and some kind of pain. 52% of our kids. Members, please vote green.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The chief clerk will call the name of the member voting remotely.
Momani Hiltsley.
Momani Hiltsley, no.
Momani Hiltsley votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 67 yeas and 67 nays, the amendment does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The chief clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 1606.
Third reading. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Bonner.
Thank you, members. Many of you know that I am just a little bit of a fan of technology. In fact, I often refer to myself as a tech evangelist. But as such, I also deeply understand the world in which we live in technology. And I think we all understand that we would love for the federal government to take the lead on putting guardrails around AI. But when they can't or are unable, what we often see is the states take the lead. That we do what is necessary to protect victims. I want to say thank you to the folks in the gallery today. The women who laid bare and were courageous enough to come forward to talk about an issue that had profound impact on their lives. And I want to tell you, as someone who experienced this exact same thing myself in my own workplace, it can be devastating. But let's talk about this a little bit. 300 million children worldwide have had or have seen nudification sites. There is no, 99% of sexually explicit deep fakes are about women and girls. 55% of teens have used AI to create sexualized images between the ages of 13 and 17. We had a recent case in Pennsylvania of a young man who decided to nudify the bodies of 60 of his classmates. And the amount of damage that caused to those victims is immense. They are facing depression. They are facing PTSD. They are facing potential suicide in many of these cases. And this was inflicted upon them by a tool created for what purpose, we don't know. But I can tell you that with the very narrow exception provided in the bill, there is no innocent usage of this tool. All that it does is leave behind the ability to control and humiliate, to violate women and children, young girls and boys. It victimizes them. It leaves behind immense pain. And while I won't go too far down this road, I just want to say that I am deeply disturbed that we are taking the focus off of these victims. These are people who have actually been harmed, children who have been victimized, women who have lost jobs, like the teacher who lost her job because someone created a non-consensual sexual image of herself using this software, and she lost her job and the ability to teach students. Like the young man who decided to victimize 60 of his classmates. There is no innocent reason to have this tool. 90% of the traffic to deepfake nudes goes through a specific app whose name I will not mention. I'm not going to give them press. But it originates from the Meta platform. Explicitly or via explicit ads on Facebook and Instagram. So not only do these tools exist, we are actually actively advertising in places where teenagers are, where adults are, where they have access to ads to go and try it out for fun. Well, I can tell you there is nothing fun in this equation for the victims. And there is nothing cool in an opportunity to take the focus off of these victims today. There is nothing cool about that. Over 500 cases of AI sexual abuse were noted. On the Telegram platform, these images were openly distributed. One platform had over 220,000 members actively trading in images that harm children. That's what we're talking about here today. They're actively trading material that victimizes women and children. And I want to reiterate that while we would love for the federal government to do something, and we've seen them take steps to try and come forward with things like the Take It Down Act or the Defiance Act, but all of those are retroactive, right? They're reactive. They're not preventative. In this chamber today, we have an opportunity to pass a bill that can actually prevent the harm from happening, so that the victims in this room, in this chamber today, do not feel disrespected by our conversation on this floor. That we actually have the ability to stop this harm in its tracks before it happens. To not disrespect them and the pain and the anguish they have gone through to be here today as victims. I fail to understand why we would want to obfuscate, to deflect from the issue at hand here today, which is to give these victims justice. This bill today has the opportunity for Minnesotans to lead, for us in this chamber to lead on providing guardrails for AI to make Minnesotans safer. But more importantly, this bill speaks for victims and it speaks for survivors. I want to encourage every member in this chamber to vote green today. We have the opportunity to lead in the nation and protect victims so that the people in this chamber, not only do they get their justice today, but we know that we will not harm others in the future. Please vote green.
I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Roach.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to start off by thanking Representative Hanson on her work on this bill. And for the advocates out there, Representative Bonner, Representative Bakeberg, you know, it is a problem. We have problems with disseminating this material, and it's disgusting and it's vile. And the victims of those should have accountability, and they should seek justice. But I rise today because I'm not going to be supporting this bill, and let me tell you why. It's not because I don't stand with the victims. It's not because I don't think that it's vile, but I don't think it's getting to the root cause. I don't think that it's actually going to prevent this in the future. What we're going to do here is we're going to go attack a software, a manufacturer, and instead shifting our focus on that instead of the perpetrators of these crimes. If we want to prevent this from happening in the future, we should go after those perpetrators with the full force of the law. And I think that is what will really do that. I'm fearful that, one, I mean, in the bill, there's an exemption. It still allows somebody to, as long as they do it themselves, to create the material. And I'm just worried that this really isn't going to stop anything. And I think it sets a precedent of going after manufacturers instead of distributors and the actual suspects. And for that reason, I am not going to be voting for this bill today. But I just wanted to set the record clear and let you know that I appreciate your work, and I think the premise of it is honorable, and I appreciate that. But I just think it misses the mark on going after the people that really should be held accountable, and that is the people that are creating and disseminating this material.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm wondering if the bill's author would yield to a question.
She will yield, Representative Scott.
Thank you. Representative Hanson, you and I had some text exchanges yesterday, and it was the 11th hour, and I told you that there were some concerns, but I told you that I wouldn't bring an amendment unless you agreed to it, and you didn't, and so I didn't. But I do have a question, and this concern came from Apple, right? So they have millions of apps available, and even though they have really strict guidelines on a prohibition on this, right, on nudification, there may be one or two apps that may seep through, right? And so they were just asking for some sort of a safe harbor piece when it came to the immunity, just some time to, if it's discovered that one of their apps has snuck through nudification, that they would have a few days to remedy that. And I just wanted to get your feedback on that concept.
Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Representative Scott, Chair Scott, I was kind of saying both at the same time. I just want to first say I appreciate you and your style so much. So thank you for reaching out, and thank you for always being willing to talk to me. I think we've come to the same page on a lot of things a lot of times. So just wanted to recognize you for that. It's admirable. I also did hear from that group, and we had agreed that we were going to see how this goes and talk about it next year. What's interesting about this, and folks should know, is that the App Store currently, they claim this is prohibited. But if you talk to young people, it's there. There's lots of apps that are still there. And so despite that kind of corporate morality, again, those glimpses of that are really encouraging, they're not doing a great job of actually getting that out of there. And I think it's important to do this because, you know, contrary to what we heard before, this actually does get at the exact root of the issue. And I know, Chair Scott, we've talked about this, and I know you agree with that too. I'm pretty sure you do. But this stops that creation of the content at the root as much as we can. And I'm in agreement that we actually should do a lot more App Store regulations or kind of enforcement and things around that, not just in my bill, but in other areas of law too. So I'd love to team up if you're interested next year, and we can tackle that together. But again, my conversations with folks who had concerns like that, they were comfortable kind of seeing how things go and then getting on it next year. Thanks.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks for that explanation. That helps me kind of level set where you're at on this. And I think, and I did mention this today to some others, that with all this technology that we're trying to regulate, we are going to have to revisit these things as time goes. And because we got to see, how our enforcement is working, how our regulation is working, and B, because everything's constantly changing. So I appreciate your efforts today. I'll be voting for the bill, and thank you for your chatting with me. Thanks.
I recognize the member from Goodhue, Representative Altendorf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, as we discuss this bill today, Representative Hanson, we appreciate that you've brought this to the forefront. AI is a problem, and it is moving faster than we have regulated, so we acknowledge that. This is an ongoing problem. But as we were talking, or Representative Bonner, when we were talking about victims, we can offer an amendment, and I thank Representative Bakeberg for bringing an amendment which was determined to be germane to this bill, because there are children victims of pornography as well. And that is what we could do today, is we don't have to do an all or nothing. We could do both. And that is what was unfortunate to see that vote today. Pornography is also a crime of victims. And when I heard people speak today, when they say the AI is atrocious, it's also atrocious to see children in school as young as 3rd grade, that a neighboring town to me, the school board is dealing with a 3rd grader who accessed hardcore porn in school and was showing it to other children. It was traumatizing. That school is now dealing with that. When the Democrats have said today that this keeps them up at night, pornography is keeping parents and children up at night. There are victims of AI, of this nudification. There's also victims of pornography, and we could do both. We could do both, members. Pornography is doing great harm. Representative Bakeberg's amendment was not denying adult access to porn. And as we see other states across the country leading towards just simply verifying age so that minors are not seeing this, so that young child in 3rd grade in Southeast Minnesota who saw this, but not only saw it himself, showed it to many others in his class, traumatizing them. Members, we can do both. We can respect and acknowledge the victims of the AI crimes that we talked about today, and we could also protect our dearest, precious children. I will be voting yes, but members, I do wish that we could look at both issues.
Any further discussion? I recognize the author of the bill, the representative from Dakota, Representative Hanson J.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, everybody, for this discussion. Again, I wish everybody the best of luck that are carrying bills about other things that we all care about. Protecting kids is really important to me, so I hope that you can find a pathway here at the legislature. It can be kind of hard sometimes, so hope that luck sends you the boost you need. But this does get at the exact root cause that we've heard about with all of these issues. The creation of the content is the root. We do go after perpetrators, but unfortunately, even the law is not strong enough to catch a lot of them, or it can't. It's the arm of the law is not long enough to reach them. So addressing the tools that perpetrators use is a new way that we can actually do more to catch more perpetrators. So I want to say thank you to you all for a discussion. This is a hard subject to talk about, and I appreciate how much more interest folks have shown in addressing this and other things like it. But most importantly, I want to say thank you 1,000 times to the advocates watching and from the galleries and online and that are joining us today there. The courage that you have shown us is an inspiration to survivors everywhere. And your work is recognized, your advocacy is important, and your voices are impactful, and I hope that's reflected here today. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for trusting me to join you on this journey. It really means a lot to me, and thank you so much for fighting for change. Please vote yes. Thanks.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. Members, please vote. The chief clerk will call the name of the member voting remotely.
Momani Hildsley.
Momani Hildsley, aye.
Momani Hildsley votes aye.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 132 yeas and 1 nay, the bill is passed and its language agreed to.